Hey, music executives, this is Cinnamon Denise. I am so excited to, one, be back. We took a long pause, aka I took a long pause from recording. And one, I'm going to be talking a lot about that with these new episodes that are coming out. I had to take a moment to pause. I had a moment where I was like, wait, why am I making these episodes? What am I trying to make? But I will say that y'all have hung in through this long freaking pause. I can't even say how long it's been that we've released an episode, but I'm excited because now these episodes are even better than the ones that we've already published, which, by the way, if you haven't heard those, go back and listen. But I want to say thank you to those of you who stuck it out, those of you who have sent me DMs about when's the next episode coming out. This is it. So I also realized that it's good to take a pause, because if you are trying to figure out why you're doing something, then just take a pause to figure out why. And now I know, and these episodes are lit. So let's get into it. So this episode is about why all musicians should practice yoga. Why all musicians should practice yoga. Now, stick with me through this entire episode, especially those who are like, yoga's not for me, yoga is stretching, yoga is exercise, yoga isn't exercise. Just stick through it with me. Now, I will say that the long pause that I mentioned is largely due to the fact that I am now a fur mom, a fur parent. I have a puppy. His name is Luther Vandross, which is appropriate because he's black and handsome and he loves to sing, aka he loves to whine. But you'll meet him later because I got so many cool initiatives coming up. But this episode, why all musicians should practice yoga. So I will say I am a yoga practitioner. I've been practicing yoga for nearly 10 years now, which blows my mind, but I teach yoga as well. That's called Zen with Sin. That's something I'm launching as well. But yoga is a powerful tool for everyone, but specifically musicians. And I'm going to give you a couple reasons why. And I will also say I did an episode with Luna Ashe on her show about yoga and explaining the different limbs of yoga. So when I say the different limbs of yoga, yoga essentially has 8 pillars or limbs that we call them. And the fourth one is called pranayama. One of them, actually the third one, is called asana. So that's the physical practice of yoga. I'm going to be speaking about the fourth one, pranayama. Now, pranayama is breath control and breathing mindfully. I'm going to read this excerpt really quickly and then we'll even dive in more. After one has attained a comfortable and steady yoga posture, the practitioner will want to ease into conscious breathing, also known as pranayama. Very quickly, the yogi or yogini will realize that calm breathing leads to a calm mind. These two phenomena, breathing and mental state, are intimately connected. When the mind is scattered with an unending flow of thoughts and anxieties, the breath often becomes uneasy and faster. On the other hand, when one consciously controls the breathing, slows it down, and even counts the breaths for a while, the mind tends to relax and let go of its usual superactive, even frenetic pace. One can give up mental doing for a while and just be in the moment. The greater success of yoga practice is to be at peace regularly. So, with that, I will say why musicians should practice yoga. Number one, if you play a wind instrument, besides the fact that you're using your breath to play your instrument, this helps you calm down with your nervousness. And as someone who can be very nervous, on stage, not being able to breathe is a problem. And this also includes singers too, vocalists, okay? So these are wind instruments that I'm talking about, as well as singers. I will say that I was born with asthma. I was born prematurely. And when you're premature, actually the last organ in a baby's body to develop are their lungs. So a lot of premature babies are born with asthma. I was born with asthma but did not know that I had asthma until I was about 7 or 8. I've had 2 instances where where I almost died from asthma attacks. Number one was I realized I was allergic to cats and cat dander. And I was at my friend's house who had cats, and my parents didn't know I was allergic, et cetera, et cetera. Got very sick. 2, just a lot of pollen issues in the air, that sort of thing. I'm from Atlanta, so the pollen leaves our cars yellow. That was the second one. And I say that because with asthma, I was born with a very small lung capacity. And I knew this. My mom wanted me to be in music from a very young age anyway. So when it was time for me to pick an instrument, I was going to pick a wind instrument. My parents were going to have me pick a wind instrument, aka, but I picked a wind instrument. I started with the clarinet. Shortly thereafter, picked up the flute, and now, of course, I've stuck with the bassoon. My bassoon's name is James the Bassoon. But once I started playing a wind instrument, my lung capacity actually increased by 45%. And the breath is so important when it comes to a wind instrument. You cannot gain a steady tone. You cannot control any of your technique because you don't have enough wind to get through all the 16th notes that you're playing in Shostakovich or that you're playing in your Weber concerto, whatever the case may be. You don't have enough air for it. And everyone teaches you, a lot of your teachers will teach you when you're starting to work on your technique, that you have to push through the entire technique. The more you get into faster notes, the more air you should be pushing through your instrument. And on top of that, when you're nervous, as a singer and as a voice teacher too, I've told my students, I had one student that she was singing and she has a great ear. But as soon as she got on stage for the first time, she lost her breath because of how nervous she was. And she started singing very off key. And we discussed this, and I told her, I said, you were nervous. And she says, how do you know? I said, because you have a great ear and your breath was no longer supporting what you needed for your songs. So pranayama is breath, right? It's essentially controlled breathing. It is focused breathing. It is intentional breathing. You need it to play your wind instrument. Now, let's say you play a stringed instrument. Let's say you play viola or violin, cello, upright bass. I played in orchestra and symphony orchestras for a long time, being that I played the bassoon. And what you'll notice when an orchestra begins, and if you have never watched an orchestra play, 1, I recommend it, but 2, you can watch them online. What you'll see the orchestra do all together is take a breath. Right? And we all go ahead and play together. If we're all starting at the same time, if it's 2D, meaning we all playing at the same time. And even if you see a, let's say, violinist playing, you'll see them kind of take an inhale before they bring their bow to their instrument. And it just allows you, takes all that nervous energy and it pushes it out. And I also told my student, which by the way, she's an amazing singer. Hopefully I can have her on the show. Which by the way, I told her that when you breathe and all of a sudden you feel like you can't control the breath, channel that in controlling it. So what I mean by that is your labored breathing should now be focused into finding a more relaxed breathing. So instead of taking that labored breathing and allowing yourself to become more anxious, more nervous, more forgetful of your lyrics, your notes, whatever, allow that to channel into something else. And that's why the controlled breathing with pranayama is so important, because it teaches you how to channel your breathing into focus. Now, let's say you play a percussive instrument. Let's say you play marimba, right? You will see marimba players, you'll see them inhale just before they strike the marimba, right? And this is allowing them to focus, whether they realize it or not, right? Or whether their teachers taught them or not. Somewhere along the way, someone taught them that, but it's allowing you to settle in. I ran a 5K this weekend. And I should say I survived a 5K this weekend because I was just like, well, this is not it. But I said it to say that I kept having to tell myself, settle in. I was running and I tapped on my head. I said, settle in, settle in, settle in. And I know people there were probably looking at her like, what is she doing? But it was telling myself, settle in. And what I meant was settle the breath, right? The reason why you get tired in a lot of races, not the sole reason, but a reason why you get tired is because your muscles are getting fatigued because you're not getting enough oxygen, because you're not breathing deeply enough. So I kept telling myself, settle in, settle in, settle in. And I'm proud to say that I didn't stop running. I used to run quite a bit. And I used to run long distance quite a bit. Probably like, I may have ran 28 miles a week at some point. And so a 5K after about 6 years of not running is a lot. So settle in. The breath allows you to settle in. And it also puts us all on the same page, because what allows us to all be human, what separates us from living beings to non-living beings is that we breathe in some way, shape, or form, right? Plants breathe, humans breathe. Everything that's living has a way to get what it needs into its body, into its being, and then usually releases something as well into the ecosystem that is used by another being of some sort. So it puts us all on the same page. It's kind of like how people say my money is just as green as someone else's, or we all bleed the same color. All of our blood is red. We all have breath. That's what we have in common. So when we breathe, we're all on the same page. Okay? So besides, this breath control where you're controlling your breathing, the thing about pranayama is you're not actually just sitting there, right, and going, right? You're not just sitting there inhaling and exhaling. Pranayama teaches you various types of breathing. It teaches you alternate nostril breathing, right? Which is where you inhale through one nostril, exhale through the other, inhale, exhale through the other. And it teaches you, this is how I'm channeling my breath. This is how I'm directing my breath. You are in control of your breath. Once you know that, you can do nearly anything physical, but then you can also do a lot of things that are mental. Yoga is something outside of music for you to focus on. Musicians, writers, dancers, we get so just, gotta make music, to where we never allow ourselves to enjoy anything other than that. And music, do not get me wrong, music is fun. Music is one of the most enjoyable activities I do. But once I stop doing music, it allows me to appreciate it that much more. Once I go onto my yoga mat, it's totally different. And I also have a good friend who spoke to me recently, and I'm so proud of him because he's starting to teach at the University of Miami, which is my alma mater. He was telling me that he started kickboxing, right? And he was like, Cinnamon, now I get it. Now I get why you love yoga so much. Now I get it. Doing something that's not music allows you to just be. As musicians, we're always trying to compete, or we're always trying to be our best, or we're always trying to be better than the next person, or we're always trying to just at least be as good as the people we're on stage with, or we're always the best one on stage. Somewhere there's some level of comparison happening. When you get onto a yoga mat for the first time and you realize that you can't do shit that they're asking you to do, it humbles you. And that humility is what keeps you in a loving place. It's what keeps you in a peaceful place. It reminds you that there's always more to learn. So I say practice yoga because it keeps you humble. I've done kickboxing. Kickboxing is a great exercise, but I think yoga is a beautiful combination between exercise, patience, humility, any good characteristic that you want to have that we don't always have. Yoga pushes you into it. As soon as you release a pose that you've been wanting to do forever, the pose then comes. Yoga forces you into a place of stillness, forces you into humility. And it's not because you're competing with anyone. It's not even that you're competing with yourself. It's that you're finding yourself inside of everything and everyone around you. So I'll stop there because I love yoga, but I do think all musicians should practice yoga at least one time. But I bet you, like Lay's chips, you can't do it just once. I'm a big chip person, so I'm always like, listen, if you don't want me eating them, don't bring them to the house because I'm going to eat the whole bag. But no, really, yoga is a powerful tool to center yourself as a musician. And I highly recommend that every musician practice yoga. And I say at least one time, but you can try anything twice. So that is today's episode. Why our musicians should practice yoga.